Muito bom dia a todos. Queria, em nome do Sr. Presidente da Câmara, o Sr. Dr. Eduardo Vitor Rodrigues, cumprimentar todos os presentes, na pessoa do Sr. Professor Rui Fernandes, cumprimentar todos os congressistas, cumprimentar também o Sr. Presidente da CCDRN, portanto, o nosso amigo engenheiro Feito de Sousa, com ele cumprimentar todo o público presente nesta sala e dizer que Vila Nova de Gaia está na linha da frente. O Sr. Presidente, na verdade, tem um privilégio de ter um executivo muito longo e cabe-me a mim hoje fazer a abertura desta conferência e dizer que esta conferência é algo que faz de Vila Nova de Gaia aquilo, faz de Vila Nova de Gaia aquilo que já todos consideram, dizer que Gaia é todo o mundo. E é todo o mundo porquê? Porque estamos sempre em cima da atualidade. Esta conferência é sem dúvida uma conferência da atualidade. As políticas de ordenamento do território são algo que todos sabem que estiveram há muitos anos pensadas, mas a concretização nunca esteve num plano de realização. Hoje em dia, o Ministério das Infraestruturas, em parceria com as CCDRNs e com as câmaras municipais, estão a desenvolver um trabalho progressivo de valorização do nosso território. E aqui cabe-me defender Vila Nova de Gaia como uma cidade que tem um território. Penso que, não, pronto, Vila Nova de Gaia tem um território assimétrico, desde o Rio Douro até o Ver, onde na verdade temos áreas verdes, áreas urbanas, áreas de praias, enfim, temos um conjunto de situações que obrigam a pensar e Vila Nova de Gaia não poderia dissociar-se desta grande iniciativa e dizer-nos que o Sr. Presidente, não só o professor, e tenho aqui que fazer uma referência especial às faculdades, porque as faculdades também estão ligadas, não só com o Rui Fernandes, como todos os outros elementos, a todo este desenvolvimento nacional. E Portugal necessita, porque isto é abrangente, não é só local, portanto, toda esta política de desenvolvimento tem que ser global e estamos aqui precisamente para debater, criar soluções para que o desenvolvimento local e nacional tenha as medidas mais adequadas. Queria aproveitar, antes de finalizar, porque na verdade quem tem que falar nestas matérias são na verdade os conferencistas, nós estamos aqui só a fazer esta abertura e na verdade desejar a todos uma ótima conferência e convidá-los, independentemente desta conferência, no espaço do Coffee Break, temos lá embaixo uma exposição dos 500 anos de Vila Nova de Gaia, portanto, dizer, não esquecer que vale a pena visitar este floral que temos cá de Vila Nova de Gaia. Está na zona do Coffee Break, aproveitem um pouquinho com um café, poderem dar a volta à exposição para não perderem o tempo desta conferência. E, mais uma vez, agradecer a presença de todos, e em especial aqui ao Rui Fernandes e, sem dúvida, ao Feito de Sousa, agradecer esta iniciativa e desejar bom sucesso por todo este trabalho. E viva Vila Nova de Gaia, viva, na verdade, todo este processo que estamos em grande progresso. Muito obrigado.
Sr. Vereador, Sr. Rui Fernandes, Dr. Oliveira Oliveira, minhas senhoras e meus senhores, cumpre-me dizer umas breves palavras a texto da abertura deste importante e interessante seminário. Gostava de, nesta ocasião, telegraficamente, saudar, por um lado, a Faculdade e o Centro de Estudos que o professor Rui Fernandes dirige pela organização deste seminário, naturalmente está enquadrado nas atividades da Faculdade de Letras da Universidade do Porto, e essa é uma primeira nota e referência que gostava de sublinhar. Em última instância, a Universidade do Porto é também a minha casa e, portanto, nesse sentido, sinto-me especialmente cúmplice da iniciativa. Em segundo lugar, enquanto economista, porque eu não sou engenheiro, acabei de ser promovido aqui, porque eu sei porquê, porque os melhores que passaram pelo lugar que eu atualmente ocupo eram engenheiros. Está aqui eu na primeira fila e, portanto, ficou essa referenciação dos. Eu agradeço porque isso significa, por um lado, uma responsabilidade maior para mim, mas também, ao mesmo tempo, uma associação a pessoas que muito prezo, no meu caso, em particular, do professor Valente Ribeiro. Mas, dizia eu, enquanto economista, eu acho que há, de uma forma simples, dois tipos de economistas. Os economistas que olham para a realidade mais ou menos como matemática, e outros que não dispensam a matemática, mas olham para a realidade como qualquer coisa que tem uma dinâmica e uma componente muito mais social do que estritamente de rigor formal. E eu, enfim, parece-me ser um pouco desta segunda dimensão, da dimensão dos que olham para a economia como uma ciência social, e, portanto, sou daqueles que acho que a economia não consegue viver, do ponto de vista científico e do conhecimento, sem a sua articulação com as outras ciências sociais, e a geografia é, nesse contexto, uma das mais relevantes, e, portanto, é também uma boa razão para eu me congratular por estar aqui. A terceira dimensão tem a ver com o facto de esta problemática das place-based policies ter, nos últimos anos, tido um surto muito significativo do ponto de vista académico e do ponto de vista também de algumas das principais instituições internacionais que se dedicam a estudar estas questões. Em particular, está aqui o José Martins, que é um velho amigo e conhecido dos meus tempos de Paris, dos nossos tempos de Paris. Ele ficou, eu vim embora, mas ele é alguém que tem nos últimos anos, no quadro da OCDE, puxado muito o aprofundamento destes temas, e eles são extremamente relevantes, e nós temos aqui um painel muito significativo de conhecedores, de especialistas, de académicos e de practitioners, digamos, nesta dimensão, e, portanto, cumprimentar o Rui Fernandes pela iniciativa e pela temática. Enquanto Comissão de Coordenação, por um lado, Programa Operacional Regional, por outro, não posso deixar também de sublinhar que a minha expectativa, e seguramente que é essa a perspectiva da maioria dos que nos produzirão comunicações, que trarão aqui um pouco do seu conhecimento e experiência, a minha expectativa é de que as place-based policies sejam colocadas num contexto que não é o contexto que tem sido dominante em Portugal. Começa a ser cada vez mais dominante na leitura deste fenómeno em termos internacionais. Não tem sido o contexto nacional, e no contexto nacional nós temos algumas instâncias que são bancas, e a instância banca que eu, salvo melhor opinião, continuo a reputar de central, é aquela que faz a articulação entre os níveis local e o nível nacional, é a instância regional, e é, portanto, será particularmente estimulante para mim que haja a possibilidade de debatermos como é que se fazem place-based policies, e eu estou a olhar para o Joaquim, porque sei que essa é uma problemática que eu tenho estudado e até com alguma aplicação a Portugal nos últimos tempos, com particular pertinência, como é que se faz a articulação entre as place-based policies e as políticas e a consideração em devido formato da instância regional. Portanto, um conjunto de razões, umas de ordem pessoal, outras de ordem institucional, fazem com que eu tenha muito gosto de me associar modestamente nesta sessão de abertura do nome da Comissão de Coordenação do Programa Regional à realização desta conferência, e cumprimentar quem, enfim, de algum modo concebeu, estruturou e teve um trabalho de bastidores que hoje aqui vai ver luz, e, por outro lado, naturalmente, desejar a todos dois ótimos dias de debate em torno destes temas que são tão relevantes. O tempo não ajuda, mas é mais uma razão para podermos estar concentrados na sala e menos concentrados no exterior. Portanto, muito obrigado a todos pela vossa atenção, muito obrigado ao Dr. Alberto por me ter convidado para estar aqui e muito bom trabalho. Muito obrigado.
Muito bom dia a todos, muito bom dia, Sr. Vereador, Arquiteto Miranda, meu caro amigo Fernando Reis Sousa. Cumprimento todos, enfim, com particular ênfase, talvez, aqui estes meus convidados especiais das primeiras filas. Eu queria dizer apenas umas breves palavras, mais ou menos formais. Uma primeira é para agradecer o acolhimento da Câmara Municipal de Vila Nova de Gaia. Ficaria mal se não o fizesse, daí temos esta opção até para vir à mesa e fazer este registro. Fomos sempre muito bem acolhidos desde a primeira vez que lançamos a ideia. O entendimento que temos é que este tipo de eventos não podem ou não devem acontecer sempre nos mesmos lugares e os geógrafos têm que estar particularmente sensíveis a estas questões, não é? E, portanto, é importante fazer em vários lugares, designadamente em vários lugares desta cidade policêntrica, que não tem nome, mas enfim, é o Grande Porto, este conjunto de municípios que fazem esta cidade de 1 milhão de habitantes, que não tem existência administrativa, mas de facto é a cidade que nós vivemos todos os dias, quem cá habita, faz compras, trabalha. Outra nota que eu queria deixar, ainda em termos de agradecimentos, é naturalmente agradecer muito o empenho daqueles que comigo colocaram isto a funcionar. A Ângela, a Inês, o Helder, o Tiago, o Luís Carvalho, enfim, um conjunto de pessoas, a Maria, o Fernando, que estão lá embaixo, portanto, um conjunto de pessoas que prepararam-se com gosto. Procuro sempre envolver-me em iniciativas que me deem prazer e que não me deem trabalho. Às vezes há pequenos contratempos, como agora, como viram na ligação com o McCann, uma vez a gente consegue que ele não pode vir, vou adiantando. Mas são contratempos, enfim, com os quais nós temos que viver e viver com boa disposição. Uma nota que eu queria deixar a propósito ainda da organização, rapidamente, é que portanto, existe um grupo dentro de uma unidade de investigação. A unidade de investigação chama-se Centro de Estudos, Geografia e Ordenamento do Território. Esta unidade é tripular, ou seja, reúne os geógrafos da Universidade do Porto, da Universidade de Coimbra e da Universidade do Minho. E dentro desta unidade foi decidido criar, enfim, por minha proposta, foi decidido criar um grupo que trabalhasse a relação entre a academia e a sociedade, vamos dizer assim, não é? A gente costuma dizer a sociedade civil, para distinguir os militares, talvez, não é? Portanto, a relação externa relativamente à investigação, muito centrada nas políticas públicas. Fizemos um primeiro encontro há 3 anos sobre a ideia do futuro desejado, ou seja, olhar para o futuro como qualquer coisa, o que é que nós queremos para o futuro. E, portanto, foi um debate interessante, que não é ficar à espera, não é discutir se pode, o que seja, é o que é que nós queremos. Quer dizer, questionar-nos a nós próprios sobre o que é que desejamos no futuro do território, o futuro da sociedade. Fizemos o ano passado um encontro a propósito da aplicabilidade da ciência, a propósito da profissionalização a partir da universidade. A profissionalização não necessariamente, aliás o tema era mesmo empresas, emprego e empreendedorismo, portanto, criação de empresas, dinâmicas diversas e também emprego, teve em debate no ano passado. E este ano trazemos a dimensão geográfica a debate, a dimensão espacial das políticas, sabendo e reconhecendo perfeitamente que esta dimensão geográfica não é apenas dos geógrafos, não é? Quer dizer, é como nós, geógrafos e outros, trabalharem o tempo, não temos que ser historiadores para a gente perceber a evolução da sociedade nos últimos 10 anos. Portanto, também não temos que ser geógrafos para dar valor à dimensão espacial do desenvolvimento. E, por isso, acolhemos, de facto, economistas que têm esta sensibilidade para o território e para a sociedade e, de facto, engenheiros e outras formações, portanto, outro engenheiro, e outras formações que, de facto, têm esta sensibilidade. E fazemos isto não em nome da geografia disciplina, mas em nome da importância geográfica do desenvolvimento, o valor do território relativamente ao desenvolvimento. E, portanto, enfim, eu penso que estão criados ingredientes para termos aqui 2 magníficos dias. Espero que sejam dias proveitosos do ponto de vista do conhecimento, da informação, E espero também que sejam dias proveitosos neste sentido que esteve por trás da organização. De boa disposição, de descontração, de estarmos bem, de falarmos uns com os outros. Eu julgo que aprender deve ser um exercício agradável, não deve ser um exercício aborrecido. E, portanto, espero que tenhamos aí 2 dias muito agradáveis, que aliás para alguns já começou ontem à noite. Não é? E, portanto, que tenham uns bons 2 dias e sejam muito bem-vindos à Vila Nova de Gaia, que é uma grande terra. Muito obrigado. Vamos aqui tentar as nossas técnicas com o... Portanto, o professor Philip McCann mandou um mail ontem à noite. Recebemos os dois. Pronto, ele tem problemas de coração. Sentiu-se mal e achou, até por indicação médica, perfeitamente desaconselhável aprender um avião. E então, o que é que ofereceu em troca? Ele tinha o PowerPoint pronto, estavam preparados, tinha as malas preparadas para vir, e o que ele sugeriu foi que se pudesse fazer por Skype. E portanto vamos sentar, temos o PowerPoint dele, ok? Já não está tudo perdido. Vamos agora tentar por Skype para ver se também temos a voz dele, ok? E depois ainda vamos fazer um ensaio triplo que é tentar ver se conseguimos discutir com ele, ok? Mas isso já não prometo tudo, não é? Vamos lá ver o que é que conseguimos. Agora, eu vou ter que ter uma coisa dessa. Sim.
Netherlands, Birmingham?
No.
Yeah, yeah.
Desculpem estes 5 minutos.
Okay, now it's on. Yeah, okay. Now we are in contact. Okay, okay. Are you able to see the... Okay. Can you see?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, okay. So be alert because everyone is listening to you, okay? So now we are I don't know if you are able to see the PowerPoint.
I can see the PowerPoint from there, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
If you
Then,
just move slightly over, I can see, yes, that's right.
then you tell me when we have to replace the slide, okay?
Okay, we can do it that way.
All right, now you have your half an
So
hour.
if you just move the camera down slightly so I can see the screen
Like
better.
that, okay.
Okay, there we go.
If you allow me, just a little presentation for the audience here, okay?
Okay, how many people in the audience?
Okay, I may speak in Portuguese, you won't be bothered,
Okay,
okay?
that's fine.
Ok, thank you. Acho que não, vou falar logo. Ora bom, o professor Philip McCann é de facto muito reputado especialista nas questões do desenvolvimento territorial. Ele é um dos mais citados na Easy Web of Science, portanto, em termos de citações, tem mais de 460 só no último ano e já tem 3.000 e tal. Portanto, este é curioso para eu verificar que neste currículo ele abre assim. Portanto, esta visibilidade, esta notoriedade hoje é cada vez mais medida nesta lógica, enfim, anglo-saxónica, mas cada vez mais mundial, não é? E alguns de nós sabem o que é que isto significa das citações, ser alguém que é reputado e que é lido e que é citado. Já foi convidado para sessões como esta, em que é Keynote Speaker, cerca de 200 vezes. É um consultor especial, foi consultor especial a 2 comissários europeus. Portanto, é alguém que influencia claramente as políticas europeias. Tem vários livros que são livros de referência para os interessados nas questões regionais e urbanas. Designadamente, enfim, vou falar do que li mais recentemente, The Regional and Urban Policy of the European Union, Cohesion, Results Orientation and Smart Specialization. And here you can see all the concepts that are in the European policies recently. So we are, some English. So I think that we are expecting from someone so well recognized, so central in terms of these public policies, and especially space-based policies. Well, we are expecting some indications of what the future public policies with this special base indication will be in the next few years. So Philip McCann, it is a pleasure. Of course, it will be even more better to have you with us physically, but okay, it's internet, it's miracles of the technology, so be welcome, and we'll be very attentive to your words, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. So, people cannot see me, but they can hear me, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I may put the face for them to see, okay? That's Philip again, okay? Joaquin, you see, huh?
Firstly, I'd like to apologise for not being there in person. I'm fine today, but I wasn't very well yesterday, and I explained to both Jose and Joaquin why. Anyway, I'm really happy to talk about these topics. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, the topic I'm going to talk about today is actually following on, in particular, with a lot of discussions we've had with Joaquin Oliver and Martins and some of the team at the OECD and the European Commission. So it really, these ideas developed out of thinking about the future of cohesion policy, but in the context of the fundamental economic changes taking place across Europe at the level of cities and regions. And if you go to the next slide, Jose.
Next slide, okay.
I I should acknowledge that what I'm talking about today is based on work I've done with different people, with Enrique Garcilaso at the OECD, with Louis Dijkstra at the European Commission, and then also with colleagues. We have a large research team working on the impacts of Brexit on not only UK regions and industries, but also on European-wide effects across all European countries and regions. So I'm going to link these issues together, and the logic of what I'm going to explain is what we see today in Europe. Actually, many of the reasons were already there before the global financial crisis. Many of the issues which we are now struggling to deal with in policy terms were already evident, but we were not really aware of them. The data wasn't there, the analysis hadn't been done, but if we look back now, we see that many of these things were already evident before the financial crisis, and then since the financial crisis, these things have become much more conspicuous. And then I'm going to use the example of Brexit to explain what I call the geography of discontent. It's the problem of different parts of the economy, different regions that feel left behind, are driving these political changes of populism. And I'm going to show you some examples also from other countries, from the United States and from other parts of Europe, because I think they all share a common theme. But the important point here is the geography of discontent that we see today already had its origins before the global financial crisis. It's not just since. So can we go to slide number 3, please?
Okay.
So if we see here, this is based on work with Enrique Garcilaso and Louis Dijkstra. These, what these patterns show, they look at the labour productivity in city regions across the whole of Europe just before the financial crisis. And these are normalised. The green line is the level of productivity in each country in non-metropolitan areas, so rural areas and small town areas. And we standardise these with a common indicator, a common green line. So if I take the case of the United Kingdom, which is almost in the middle, just to the right of the centre, UK, what does UK look like? Well, what we see is that even before the crisis, 1/3 of the UK's cities, large cities, had productivity levels below rural areas. Below rural areas and small town areas. 1/3 of the UK's cities. And these are very large cities, places like Birmingham, places like Sheffield, Bradford, Newcastle, Liverpool, very large populations of people, already with productivity levels below the average for small town and rural areas. Approximately 2/3 of the cities, the metro areas, over 1/4 of a million people, had productivity levels higher. Now look at Italy. Almost half of Italy's cities had productivity levels below rural areas and small town areas, even before the crisis. And how you read these vertical lines, the darker is the line, the bigger is the city. And the darkest line in each country case is the capital city. So this is what we're seeing here. So if you look at the German case, DE, just to the left of the centre, you see that before the crisis, the productivity levels in Berlin, on the left-hand side, were actually below rural and small-town Germany. But that's not surprising, because Berlin was being reconstructed as a new capital still in the post-reunification era. But the important point is, when you look at many countries, if you move to the left of Germany, DE, we see ES, is Spain. Half of Spain's cities have productivity levels which are very weak. And so part of the issue is that some of the clues of the crisis were already there. If we move to the next slide, number 4, we also see similar patterns in terms of changes in labour productivity. This is in the period between the millennium and the crisis, when interest rates were low, inflation was low, growth was strong in almost all places. But again, if we look in the middle of the graph, we see the UK. What do we see? We see about 40% of the UK's cities had productivity growth, which was worse than rural areas and urban areas. It's not what textbooks tell us, it's not what we imagine from theory, but this is what was happening. And we see similar patterns in many different countries. The countries on the left-hand side of the diagram are countries which are primarily Central and Eastern European countries, part of the accession group. And what do we see there? Well, in general, the cities are outperforming the rural areas. That's basically the general story. But it depends country by country. Let's move to slide number 5.
Okay.
And if we look at slide number 5 again, think about population change, people moving into cities because of the advantages of cities. Well, again, if we look at examples, if you look at the UK, which now is on the right-hand side of the diagram, what we see with the UK is that a very large number of the UK cities actually had population growth which was worse than non-urban areas. In many cases, it was negative. At the time, the macroeconomy was prosperous in this period before the crisis. In general, people were not worrying about these issues. They were not asking these questions, not in mainstream politics. People like myself, people like Joachim, who study these things, we were concerned, we were thinking about these issues already, but in general, people were not talking about these issues. But the point is that many of the areas which are big, large numbers of people, urban areas in particular, which account for a large share of economic output, were actually extremely vulnerable before the crisis. But because we had this period of low inflation, low interest rates, easy credit, these problems were being largely hidden. And this is true in many countries. You see this in Germany, in Spain, in the UK, in Italy, and in others. Okay, if we move to slide number 6.
Okay.
This is work again. This is a more recent paper with Enrique Garcilaso from OECD and from Lewis Dijkstra. What we do is we look then at the changes before the crisis and after the crisis. And we characterize it using the OECD classification of different types of regions. So the dark line, the black line, are primarily urban regions. The grey line, the shaded line is IN, these are intermediate regions. This is where we have small, medium-sized towns in rural areas as well. Then we have the dotted lines, which are points. These are primarily rural regions, but which are close to urban areas. And then we have the dashed lines, the long thin ones. These are the rural regions which are remote. What do we see? Well, the critical turning point is the year 2001. If you look along the bottom of the graph to the year 2001, that is when Europe changed. Before 2001, most growth rates, and there's different ways to measure this, but we do it in every variation, and the results don't really change. Before 2001, urban areas in Europe were driving economic growth. The dark shaded line at the top shows that. The rural regions which are remote, they were doing pretty well in many cases. Some of them not doing too bad. The intermediate regions, small towns in rural areas, they were in the middle. And then at the bottom, we had the rural areas which were close to cities were struggling because people were leaving these areas and moving into cities. And this kind of description is fairly similar to the United States story, the story of Canada, Australia, and is fairly typical from what we might expect in the textbook. Around 2001, Europe went into reverse. So this was the period, the same period, where credit was easy, interest rates were low, inflation was low, everything seemed fine in those countries. What started to happen is, if you look at the black line, the dark black line, it starts to slide downwards. The reason is that urban areas starting to struggle. This is across many parts of Europe we see this. And urban areas started to be overtaken by intermediate areas in 2002, 2003, started to become overtaken by rural areas close to cities in 2005, 2006. And then when the global financial crisis happened in 2007, 2008, what do we see? We see, of course, all regions, their growth rates collapsed. But we see a change in ordering, and the cities which had been driving growth in the 1990s and in the early 2000s across Europe as a whole actually started to move backwards. They started to move to the bottom of the ordering. If we go to the next slide, slide 7.
Yes. Okay.
We see this again. We see breaking up in detail in a slightly different way of measuring. Again, you see what's happened more clearly here in terms of the dark line. Cities suddenly became, in many cases, a problem. Their growth rates collapsed and they actually contracted much more than many other parts of the European economy, other types of regions. The regions which survived the strongest in the post-crisis era were the rural regions which were close to cities, and then the intermediate regions, that's the small town areas interacting with rural areas, and the parts of the European economy that suffered the most were rural regions which were remote, very isolated, and urban areas. If we go to slide number 8.
Yes.
Table. Actually, what we show here is these same patterns appear on many different ways of measuring. On the left-hand side, we show different ways of measuring the resilience, the response to the global financial crisis across Europe. And then, this is GDP per capita, GDP per hour worked, employment ratios, unemployment ratios. Whichever way we do it, we actually get the same ordering. In terms of vulnerability to the crisis, places which were highest in terms of vulnerability were PRR, primarily rural regions, which were remote, and primarily urban regions. And the regions with the lowest vulnerability, surprisingly the most resilient, were IN, which is the intermediate regions. This is small town networks of small towns, and PRC, which are the rural regions close to the cities. So we saw a complete reversal of the structure, or the logic, if you like, of how the city and the regional system in Europe was performing in the aftermath of the crisis. But the point is that the vulnerability that we see in the aftermath of the crisis was already evident before the crisis. Just at the time, people were not aware of this. If we move on to the next slide, which is slide number 9.
Okay. Yes.
What we see here is, this is a breakdown. This is just looking at the urban group. So the metropolitan urban regions classified with the OECD and the European Commission definitions. So these are metro areas of 250,000 or above. And again, we look at pre-crisis and post-crisis. What do we see? Well, if we look at the EU 15 countries, then what we see in terms of GDP per head growth, that's probably an easy way to think about it. So the second column on the left-hand side, the capital metro regions, the Lisbons, the Londons, the Amsterdams, they were growing very strongly. It was a good news story. They were doing very, very well. The second group metro regions were also performing strongly, followed by the smaller regions. So even within the cities, there was very much a scale effect amongst the EU 15. And we also see a similar pattern amongst the EU 13, the accession countries. Again, the capital metro regions were the strongest productivity growth, followed by the second tier and then the smaller regions. Of course, the growth rates were higher in the EU 13. That is not surprising. But this is quite a simple scale productivity agglomeration story that you might expect from a textbook. The problem is that when we look at 2008 to 2011, the post-crisis period, what do we see? Well, if we look at the EU 15 countries, the figure minus 0.79 tells us that the declines in GDP per head growth were actually more severe in the capital regions and the large cities. So the shock effects, as I showed you with the previous tables, actually you see the same thing even within the city group. And it was the smaller metro regions, the smaller towns that were actually much more resilient. Towns that were something between 100 and 250 or 300,000 people tended to be more resilient. If we look at the EU 13 regions, well again, look at the third column from the right-hand side. What do we see? The shock effects of the crisis were very severe on the capital regions. They were the ones which had grown the fastest, but also the shock effects were the deepest. Whereas the second and third tier metro regions were more resilient, also in the depression countries. So this is the general pattern. And one of the important issues, I mean, I'm very much, working with OECD, in particular, I spend a lot of time discussing about these issues with Joachim. I very much follow the OECD evidence on these issues because, often we hear discussions about trying to this kind of, very much in the North American narrative, but that does not apply to the European case. The European case is much more complicated. So the point is that if we move to slide number 10, the next slide.
Okay. Yeah.
When we look at the European urban regional context, what we see is that both cities and regions of different types have suffered. The European experience is very different to the triumph of the city type of story that you often hear from Asian discussions in Asia or in North America. Why is this? Well, there are some things we can think about, but I'll come back to them in a moment. One of the points is that what we do see is that cities seem to exacerbate, they accelerate, they magnify the post-crisis trends. So countries which have done very well, or let's say reasonably well since the crisis, in general their cities have also been doing very well. They've been holding the countries up. But countries which have been really struggling since the crisis, in many cases the cities have been pulling the countries down. This is the story of the United Kingdom, for example. So while we think about urban advantages related to employment productivity, well, this is true in the EU 13 countries, but in the EU 15 countries, the story is much more complicated. The cities have provided advantages, but they've also provided severe disadvantages in some cases. And so processes of reform vigilance, where everything was getting more equal, weaker places were catching up. This is the story before the crisis. In many countries, we've now seen the process of divergence. And there's a great emphasis amongst a lot of policymakers now and academics to think about the new challenges facing lagging regions, regions which are following or trying to catch up, how these challenges have become, in many cases, more difficult in the post-crisis era. So one of the arguments, if we move to slide number 11,
Okay.
one of the arguments I've been working on in discussions with various people is that a big issue here is that so much of the financial debt that was contracted in the financial crisis was actually secured on the basis of real estate. The vast majority of small firms raise capital by using real estate as their collateral. And so one of the difficulties of the financial crisis is that the real estate shock, and of course the global financial crisis, only 3% of US real estate assets were facing problems, but that was enough to trigger the global financial crisis. And so businesses, particularly a lot of small businesses, family-run businesses, where credit and financial flows were secured on the basis of real estate assets, people remortgaging their own homes, for example. The problem is that even if these businesses were very well run, they were profitable, after the financial crisis, those companies, many of them were facing a credit crisis because the value of real estate assets was falling, so their balance sheet position was going from the black to the red, even though in terms of their operating conditions, not necessarily anything had changed. So what we have is a process where the financial shocks within the real estate market then start to affect and infect the rest of the real economy. And this is the story of the 1929 crash. This was the Wall Street crash. This is precisely what happened. And again in 2008. And of course, the level of real estate debt is dominated by cities. And if you think of agglomeration type arguments, externalities, then negative externalities are also very important. You get contagion processes also within cities where whole streets or neighbourhoods, their real estate prices are going in reverse together. And of course, that's changing the financial position of all the businesses, which then locks them out from credit markets and so on. So this has been the kind of process that we think has been taking place. This has also happened in terms of subnational government. We know in countries such as Spain, for example, many subnational government authorities have also been tied up with these real estate problems in terms of their balance sheet positions. But the point I want to make is that these financial shocks, they had reasons before the crisis, they had results and outcomes which were very dangerous since the crisis, and of course now they are changing public and political perceptions at the local and the regional level. Places which have been hit badly by the crisis, places which have been struggling, people there are angry. And it's perfectly reasonable to understand why they are angry. So what I'm going to do now is, if we move on to the next slide, which is number 12, I'm going to start off by telling you the story of the UK.
Okay.
And then we'll look at the United States, Austria and Italy as other examples. So we're on slide 12, the map of the UK. You have that?
Yes.
Okay, this is the Brexit vote. These are the local areas, the places which voted yellow. So if you look at the middle map of the UK, the places which are yellow voted to remain in the European Union. And the places which voted blue voted to leave. And if you look at the map on the left-hand side, the darker is the yellow, the more mustard type colour, then the stronger was the vote to remain. And the vote on the right-hand side, the darker is the blue, the stronger is the vote to leave. Okay? But the middle map is the most important. What do we see? Scotland voted entirely to stay in the European Union. Northern Ireland voted majority to stay. Some of the cities in England, so I can see there Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, voted to stay. And then, apart from a small number of areas in Wales, the other areas which voted to stay in the European Union strongly are London and all of the prosperous areas around London: Oxford, Cambridge, Guildford, Basingstoke, Hampshire. Many of you will be familiar with these localities. The area around London is very prosperous. Strong vote to remain. What does this map represent? If I go on to slide number 13,
Okay.
the UK economy is splitting into 3 separate countries. At the bottom is London and its hinterland. They are shaded dark purple. That's London, southeast, the east and the southwest of England. They're all at the bottom of the country. They are broadly very prosperous. And most of those areas voted Remain. Scotland at the top has been slowly separating from the rest of the United Kingdom institutionally. It's becoming more autonomous. And it's been drifting away for the last 20-25 years, particularly since the establishment of the Scottish Parliament in the late 1990s. And then the middle of the UK, that I call the rump of the UK, is the light shaded areas. It's all of the Midlands of England, all of the north of England, plus Wales, plus Northern Ireland. This area includes cities like Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Nottingham, Leicester, Sheffield, Newcastle, Bradford, many big industrial areas, Birmingham, Coventry. These places have really struggled since the crisis. But if we were to think about the first slides I showed you, they were the places also struggling before the crisis, and people didn't really notice it because everything seemed to be going quite well. Scotland was prospering before the crisis. It was doing very well for 10 or 15 years before the global financial crisis. And of course, London and its hinterland economy was doing extraordinarily well before the crisis and also since the crisis. I mean, when you go to London, it's very hard to see any evidence that there was a crisis. But if you go to a city like Bradford, in Yorkshire, then the evidence of the crisis is very real. It's still there. So one of the difficulties that the UK is what I call decoupling. It's separating, it's breaking apart economically. And there's lots of images to try and characterize this, as you see on this slide here. If I move to the next slide, number 14.
Okay.
Why is this happening? Well, the reason it is happening is because of the effects of globalization are so powerful. I mean, in the London financial markets, just in the foreign exchange component of the London financial markets, the amount of money moved in a single day is 2 trillion US dollars. That is just in one financial centre, in one section of the market. That's the foreign exchange dealings within the London market. $2 trillion. What does it mean? Within a week, the amount of money which has gone through the London foreign exchange market is about equivalent to half the annual output of the European Union economy, or half the annual output of the United States economy. The problem is the scale of globalization is so gigantic, it's so powerful. And remember again, the global financial crisis was caused by just 3% of the US domestic real estate assets facing problems. This is the power of markets. And what's happened in the United Kingdom is that in the modern era of globalization, the London economy has prospered. The financial markets, the Channel Tunnel, Heathrow Airport, all the tourism industry, all the legal services, classic knowledge-type industries, publishing, intellectual property, everything. But many parts of the UK have not followed along this line. They've struggled. They're kind of locked out of the modern globalized economy. And so the impacts of modern globalization since the late 1980s, they're totally different across the UK. And you see them in terms of age profiles, education, skills, occupation, and of course, social attitude are changing and diverging profoundly. Now, in the Brexit debates, before the actual vote, one of the powerful arguments of the Vote Leave campaign was that the people who benefit from Europe, from the single market, from the European Union, the people who benefit are what were called metropolitan elites. And they are the metropolitan elites in London. That was the point. That the people who benefit from Europe are all in London, and the rest of the UK is kind of locked out. They don't enjoy those benefits. Now, this was very much the story. This was very much one of the powerful narratives. And you see it in the geography votes. As I've shown you these maps, you see it. London and its hinterland strongly pro-Remain. The rest of the UK, except Scotland and Northern Ireland, strongly pro-Leave. What does this represent? It represents what I call a geography of discontent. We know in general that from the Brexit vote, for example, people who are more likely to vote Leave, they tended to be older, they tended to be less educated, less skilled in lower wage jobs, and so on. This is a general profile. So the profile of a Remain voter, they were more likely to be younger, more international in outlook. 5 minutes is that? Okay, fine. More likely to be international in outlook. But also it depends where you live. If you're in an area which struggles economically, then you're more likely to vote to leave. If you're in an area which is very prosperous, you're more likely to vote Remain. So if I'm going to, can I move on 2 slides to slide number 16?
Okay.
What we see here is this is work that we did after the vote. On the horizontal axis, we see the proportion of people who voted leave in each locality, and on the vertical axis, we see the dependency of each locality on European markets. People were told that the beneficiaries of Europe were the London elites. Actually, London is the bottom left-hand corner dot. London is less dependent on the European market than anywhere else because it's so globalized. Go to the next slide. This is also true in terms of local labour income. We see exactly the same pattern. So the point here is that the people who voted leave are in the regions which are most dependent on Europe for their prosperity. This is the irony. I go to the next slide. It's also not a question of whether you are in services or manufacturing. It doesn't matter. If you're more integrated with European manufacturing, also all your service industries are more integrated with Europe because of supply chains, local value chains. So basically the narrative that the people who benefit from Europe are the elites, actually it's completely the opposite in the UK case. The places which really require Europe for their markets and prosperity are the weaker places, all of which voted leave. So that we've got a real problem now in the UK because the economic argument and the political narratives are completely the opposite to each other. So if I jump on to 3 slides, go 3 slides forward to the map.
Okay.
This is the exposure of all European regions to Brexit. It's calculated through using what's called the interregional extensions to the World Impact Output Database. All of this is all publicly available, it's already been published. This is an enormous computational exercise of 14 million data points, but basically this is what it looks like. The United Kingdom is far more exposed to the shocks of Brexit than anywhere else. That is not a surprise. But in particular, regions in the Midlands and the north of England where people are unhappy, they vote leave, they have a geography of discontent, they are the most vulnerable, followed by the regions in Ireland. The next most vulnerable regions are in Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium. But the differences are very large. The British region's exposure levels to Brexit are between 10 and 17%. The Irish regions are 10%. The German regions are around 5%. The Dutch region about 4%. The Belgian region is about 3%. The French region is about 2%. And then the rest of Mediterranean Europe, Central Europe and Nordic Europe, the exposure levels are less than 1%. Almost no exposure to Brexit. It's because of the geography of trade patterns. Next slide.
Yes. Okay.
This is in terms of local labour income effect. We basically get exactly the same results, more or less the same results. I can make all of this available to everybody because it's already published and it's got open access. Okay, I can see it's if we look at slide 26, this is the US.
26?
26, this is the geography of discontent.
Yeah.
Got the map of the US in front of you. This was kindly sent to us by Richard Florida. Joachim Alvira, Lewis Dykes and myself have been having conversations with Richard Florida in the United States. This was sent to us by Richard. This is the voting for Clinton versus Trump. Clinton is blue, Trump is red. Not a single city of over 1 million people in the United States voted for Donald Trump, except the city of Fort Worth in Texas, and that's because of the way the metropolitan area was calculated with the surrounding area. Apart from Fort Worth, everywhere voted, every city of over 1 million people voted Clinton, and almost every city of below 1 million people in the United States voted Trump. All rural areas in the United States, almost every single one, voted Trump. Because in the United States, the geography of discontent is strongly between cities and rural areas. It's big cities and small towns. That is the US story. Australia looks exactly the same. Even New Zealand looks the same. Whereas in Europe, the geography of discontent is more subtle. If I move to the next slide, number 27.
Okay.
This was the referendum in Austria last year, 2 years ago rather. What do we see? The strong vote for the liberal, progressive candidates were all in the cities. Vienna, Linz, Graz, Innsbruck. And the votes for the very conservative candidate were all in the blue areas in small town and rural Austria. If we go to the next slide, number 28. I'm almost finished now. You can see it in the voting preferences. Basically, all large cities are at the top, and then as you go further down, the proportions get smaller and smaller, and then you look at small town Austria, and it's all entirely voting in the opposite direction to the large cities. If you look at Italy, this is the constitutional referendum under Renzi. Now, of course, we know as a whole the country voted no to the changes, but again, the places with the higher votes for the referendum change were the wealthiest places in Tuscany, up in Trento, Bolzano regions and so on. And then as you move down Italy, you go further and further south, poorer and poorer regions, all voting no. And again, if you move on to slide 30, you see it in the proportions. In fact, the Italians overseas are the ones who have the strongest votes for the constitutional change. So if we go to my last slide, which is number 31, what is happening? Well, what seems to be happening in different countries is that we are seeing what we call a geography of discontent, and it drives the revenge of the places that don't matter. That's the phrase Van der Rees both said. And this is now having profound political consequences in many countries. Why? Because we know that stakeholders and engagements are essential for well-functioning political and institutional systems. Regional engagement is essential for a sense of participation on the part of all communities in the economy and in the wider society. But many places have lost that sense of engagement. They don't feel a part of what's happening. And of course, this is the importance of place-based thinking, the kind of reforms that were being undertaken in cohesion policy in the period after the Barker report, the OECD, many OECD documents advocating these arguments. This is the whole point about place-based thinking, place-based analysis, place-based learning and policy development. It's essential for good national governance. That's been long advocated by the OECD and the Barker report. That's the point. Places really matter. Whereas before the crisis, they were being ignored, it's called the big city story, and in the post-crisis, because of the fiscal constraints, lots of governments didn't want to ask these kind of questions. So what's happening now is we're seeing these political shocks where people are reacting. In my own country, the UK, my argument is that the UK completely is having to rethink its whole national governance system and how it relates to places. So I stop there. I'm sorry I've overrun a little bit, but I stop there.
Well, it wasn't previewed to have a round of questions, and in fact we are late in time because of technologies, you know. But anyway, if you allow me, I'll ask someone to put one question, and I'll ask Joaquim Oliveira Martins maybe put one question because your name was mentioned and I know that you know Philip very well. Maybe one question just for finish this part, okay? And
Yes, Philippe. So you gave us this extraordinary sort of presentation and argument, and I must say that this idea of the geography of discontent that you have coined, has become now in the OECD actually one of the main arguments, indeed, to take into account these some national dimensions, place-based sort of components, and really helped to sort of convince people which were outside the regional policy constituencies that indeed place-based policies should be an integral part of the structural policy package. So this is really a very important step. I think now we are in a kind of level playing field in terms of the policy discussion, which has dramatically changed. But what you presented is also a sort of a paradox, right? The places that need the most of openness, globalization, trade are the ones that are the most discontent, right? And our results, for example, in the regional outlook, OECD regional outlook 2016, show very neatly that actually one of the main drivers of regional productivity catching up is precisely this intensity of the tradable sectors, this exposure to international competition. So this is a sort of a paradox. So we need this exposure to international competition. These places need trade, and in particular need Europe, because our continent is extremely integrated continent from the trade point of view, and still they are discontent, they vote against openness. So how are we going to address this sort of paradox? What kind of narrative could we formulate to perhaps put back things like the multilateralism into the sort of policy arena? The next OECD ministerial meeting will be shared by France. It's going precisely to be about how to revive multilateralism approach in international politics, right? So what would be your recommendation? I think, you of course, what you said about place-based policies and the role of regional policy, of course, but what you'd recommend as a narrative to put things back into track, because our societies are really under strong threat, I would say, of this dislocation, as you said, this decoupling inside our countries. All countries are not holding together, and this should be one of the main responsibilities of central governments, which they have been neglected over these past years, right?
Obviously, I agree entirely with your comments. One of the arguments that was widely talked about, say, a decade ago, particularly the World Development Report that came out in 2009, Reshaping Economic Geography, argued that at the time it was not important to think about the distributional consequences of things. What you want is whatever produces the maximum output and growth for the economy. It doesn't matter where it is, it doesn't matter who it goes to. Why? Because in economic terms, or economic theory, let's say, as long as the winners can compensate the losers, then in net terms, society is better off. This was the argument. But as Danny Roderick points out, very rarely do the winners compensate the losers. It's okay to say in aggregate that this is true, but the point is that there's very rarely systems for compensation. Now, obviously there's taxation, through income tax or whatever, but in the particular case here, you need to think about compensation systems, not just in terms of giving money to people, but real development potential targeted at the places that need that greater help. Because the effects on these communities of globalization are enormous, and they need the help to take advantages of the opportunities of globalization, because as you say, ironically, they are the places which are most dependent on it. But how do you explain that in a political narrative, when politicians have very short-term life cycles, political cycles, most political interviews are very short and brief, you're actually having to explain something which is extraordinarily complex, and where almost all political narratives go completely in the opposite direction of the underlying economic arguments. And it's very, very difficult. I'm often interviewed in the media in the UK talking about these issues. The irony of Brexit is many people voted Brexit because they thought it would help their weaker regions. It's actually going to make it much, much worse. And I've spoken publicly about this on numerous occasions. All the evidence says it's going to make it much, much worse for precisely the people who voted. But you can also understand from their feeling, their sense that they feel that the state has left them behind, that governments haven't cared about them, that the institutional systems have not done anything for them. Well, to be honest, there's a lot of truth in that. They haven't. Because people are happy to take the benefits of globalisation, but without thinking about the consequences for the people who struggle. And in the UK case, that has been a huge reality. The problem is that the reality now is that we need to do even more to help those places because it's going to get a lot more difficult for them. Whether that help is going to happen, that's a different question again.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Philip, thank you. Vamos fazer agora um intervalo de 15 minutos, está bem? Há um coffee break lá embaixo e depois começamos aqui à mesa redonda. Não é mesa, é espetacular. Thank you.